Sounds Catholic. No mai, haere mai. Welcome to Sounds Catholic, the Advent season. I'm Ken Joblin, Ngamihi o Te Wā. This week we meet Fr Robert Barron, a Catholic evangelist from the Archdiocese of Chicago. He visited us earlier this month to direct our diocesan priests in their annual retreat. We're privileged to feature him on today's program as he's a priest with considerable media presence and expertise. He was ordained in 1986, has a doctorate in theology, and has quite a presence on radio and television. He's particularly well known among younger people for his presence on the web. His website, wordonfire.org, is visited by over 1 million people each year. You can also find him easily on YouTube. His most recent endeavour is the Catholicism Project, a 10-part DVD series about the Catholic faith. We'll hear more about this project and the importance of evangelisation shortly. But how did Father Barron, a diocesan priest, end up on the web?
I'll just give you one little story. This is going back about 10 years now, maybe longer. I was back home in Chicago, and I was complaining to this priest friend of mine that we Catholics were so far behind the curve when it comes to the use of the media. I said, heck, we should be using not only radio and TV, but all the new media. We should be out there and, Fulton Sheen, I don't know if you know that name, but the great American TV evangelist, Catholic bishop, was the pioneer. But then after Fulton Sheen, we kind of dropped the ball, and the Protestants are so much better than we are, blah, blah, blah. So finally he stopped. He looked at me and said, well, what are you doing about it? I said, well, what can I do about it? I'm a seminary professor. He said, well, let's stop complaining about it. So I have to confess, that bugged me, What was I doing about it? So I went to a local radio station in Chicago, WGN, and I said, hey, just for fun, how much would it cost me to get on for a sermon show? They said, well, we got a really good time at 5:15 Sunday morning. And it would cost you $50,000. So I said, okay. So I went to the Diocese of Chicago and I said, hey, I can get on the radio for $50,000. And when the laughter died down, they said, oh no, we can't do it, but go and raise the money and we're all behind you. So I did. I went out to the parish I was helping out and I told the people just what I told you. And they responded. They gave me the money. And so I got on the radio in Chicago. And then we developed a website to kind of house these sermons I was doing. And that's how Word on Fire, deriving from Jesus' grace, I've come to light a fire on the earth. Word on Fire was born. And then a couple years after that, I got a shot in the arm from Cardinal Francis George, who was the Archbishop of Chicago. He said, I want you to jumpstart the evangelization of the culture. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I don't know, but I want you to do it. So I said, okay. And I started giving talks around in Chicago to business leaders and so on. And they were good. They were fine, I think. But I said, Reverend, there's so much more we could do if we just kept using the media more creatively. And so I started using the internet, and especially YouTube. And about 4 years ago, just when it started, I heard about it. I thought, why don't we try something with YouTube? So I began to do these little commentaries. I thought, for people under 40, they're much more geared to videos than to written things. So I would reach out to the culture, to books and movies and music and what's going on in the news. And I try to make little commentaries, 8, 9 minutes. We throw a few little pictures and music in, and we put those up on YouTube. And I had no idea who watched them. Maybe my mother. I seriously didn't know. So we put them up, and before I knew it, they were being very widely watched. We now have close to 3 million downloads of these things. But and then I discovered that people could comment. I didn't know that. You can comment on these videos. Well, I found out. Every new atheist in America jumped on my website. But I must say, I kind of enjoyed that. And how else would the church ever engage a 20-something man, let's say, who's angry at the church, never would come to Mass, but stumbled on one of my videos and had enough energy to engage the question, so I thought, great. And I would answer back. And before I knew it, these long conversations ensued, and many people began to watch and attend to those. I'll tell you a quick story about the YouTube. This is a couple years ago. I got an email from a young guy, 19. He said, Father, I hated the Catholic Church, and I hated priests. But I love Bob Dylan. And he was Googling Bob Dylan one night. And I love Bob Dylan too, and I've done a number of commentaries on Bob Dylan's songs to show the biblical import of it. So he said, I stumbled on your video on All Along the Watchtower, one of Bob Dylan's great songs. He said, I saw your Roman collar and I wanted to just delete the video. But something possessed me to watch it. He said, I liked it. And I went to another one of your Bob Dylan commentaries, and that led me to another of your videos, and then to a whole slew of your videos, and then back to your website. And now, I'm not suggesting this is typical. This is a wonderful exception. But he said, I'm now in the RCIA program, becoming a Catholic. And that is one of those moments where you say, that's why I'm doing this, is to use this tool that sends seeds all over the world. You put something on YouTube, it's 24/7 all over the world, And so it was able to reach out to someone like that. Do you know about Charlie Sheen down here? He was going through a terrible year. Well, another email I got just cracked me up. The person said, I was Googling Charlie Sheen during this crisis, just to find what's going on. And she found something on Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen led her to Martin Sheen, Charlie's father, right? Martin Sheen led her to Fulton Sheen because Martin Sheen took his name from Fulton Sheen. And Fulton Sheen led her to me. So from Charlie Sheen to me, and then she began watching the videos and she got much more interested in the church. I thought, well, Lord, if you want to use Charlie Sheen for your evangelical purposes, that's okay by me. But that's the power of this thing,
Sounds Catholic, the Advent season, on Plains FM 96.9.
My dream project all this time for evangelization was this 10-part documentary that we called the Catholicism Project. I don't know if you remember from years ago, Lord Kenneth Clark's Civilization. Remember that program? Well, when I was a kid, a teenager, that came on the BBC and then public television in America. And it was this great figure, Kenneth Clark, who was the director of the National Gallery in London. And he took people on this great tour of Europe, basically, to show them Western civilization. To talk about it, but also to show them Chartres and the Sistine Chapel and Bernini's Colonnade and everything else, right? In beautiful color, with all the texture and imagery of the Western civilization. Well, that show really impacted me when I was a kid. And I thought for the longest time, wouldn't Catholicism be a great subject for that kind of treatment? Because we're a truthful religion, and we're full of theological depth. But we're also a beautiful religion. We've used the arts and architecture and culture to propagate the faith. So I began to dream about that project. And to make a long story short, I had to raise about $3 million for that. And it's a great part of the story. I went to ordinary Catholics. I didn't get a penny from the church. And we did this 10-part documentary. And I went to 16 countries around the world to show the texture of Catholicism. You see here, that's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And that was the first trip we took to the Holy Land. But we went all over the world, including to Calcutta, and I filmed there with the Missionaries of Charity. One of the great trips for me was Uganda. I teach at the seminary near Chicago, and we teach a number of students from Africa. And they knew about the project, and I asked them, where should I go to show African Catholicism? And they said to a person, Namugongo. I said, where's Namugongo? It is right near Kampala, the capital of Uganda. And that's where Charles Lwanga and his companions were martyred. You know that story of Charles Lwanga, who refused sexual advances from the king, and the king ordered him to renounce his faith, and when he wouldn't do it, they were martyred. And anybody seeing that scene in 1886, I'm sure would have said, that's the end of Catholicism in Africa. But now you go there on the feast day, June the 3rd, and 500,000 people gather at this site, Namugongo, and these magnificent processions and choirs singing. And you see in the distance the very site where Charles Lwanga was burned at the stake. And I just found it incredibly moving to be there. And I cited, for the series, that line from Tertullian, that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of Christians. And I said, now, is this true in this case? And I said, you tell me. And with that, the camera pulled back to reveal the 500,000 people there. So that's the kind of thing I wanted to show in the series, with this great texture of Catholicism around the world. And we showed a lot of works of art and architecture, along with the theology. The church is going through a dark period. The church is under fire, it's under attack. The Catholic story is being told, but being told by the wrong people in the wrong way. We need to tell our own story. We need to get the message out so as to draw people in. Catholicism is smart, Catholicism is beautiful, Catholicism is colorful, it's textured, it engages the mind and the heart and the body. Christianity always has an explosive power. If we let it be itself, it always has this transformative power. We worked with NBC, a lot of people from NBC in America. It's a long story how we got that connection. But that gave us access to a lot of places around the world. And I insisted on using, high-definition photography, the best technology, because one of my complaints is a lot of Catholic media is well-intentioned but not all that high quality. And I wanted this to be high quality. And there's one reason, I think, why it was picked up by public television in America, which was a great surprise to me. Public television, has a wide viewership, but its policies tend to be rather neutral or even a little bit hostile to religion. So we brought it down to the local public television in Chicago, and we showed them the 10, or gave the 10 episodes, and they called us down. I thought it was a good sign. And I said, they said, well, we'd love to show it. We love it. And I said, you do? I was honestly surprised. They said, yeah, we think it would appeal to any person of faith or any religious seeker. And then they syndicated it around the country, and 100 other stations, PBS stations, picked it up. So for the past about 6 weeks, it's been showing in America in